I covered this a couple of days ago, maybe about a week and a half ago, about the breakup between the lesbian, gays, and bisexuals who are saying, screw you to the trans community, and basically saying, we are going to do our own thing from here on out. So this is a call for freedom for the gays and the bis and the lesbians from their insane anti-science and, let's be honest, generally weird community that is the transformer people. Now, there are nice transformers out there, but there's a lot of militants. There's a lot of hatred. And of course, you've got the fans at the playground, aka pedo Joes out there, who have been pushing their sexuality onto children, which is a big no-no for most normal people. And we had to have seen this coming because, I mean, come on. Once you start sexualizing children, that's it. You've lost the plot. All my life, I grew up in California. I had a lot of hippie friends. I had gay friends when I was younger. There was a couple of in the closet people, and you never cared. It was, you lived and let lived. You didn't care. And then there was a campaign for gay marriage, and they won. They got it. And for some reason, when that battle was won, the left did not like the fact that it didn't have a crusade anymore. And so adding the transformers into the movement allowed there to be a new crusade. And it's just never stopped since then. And the gay community has been held hostage by the trans. You had the steep rise in the militant wing of this group, the thought police, attacking and censoring and deplatforming anyone who disagreed, and not just from outside the movement. But in the video that I did about 9 days ago on this subject, I've seen dozens and dozens of comments from folks within the gay community who have said, yeah, we were silenced. They couldn't talk about it. So this seems like an inevitable reality, a consequence of the T side of the movement bullying the rest of the country and the rest of the world. Let's be honest. All Western societies have been under this tyranny now for the last 15 years. And I think the fans of the playgrounds, the MAPS community, the minor attracted persons, as they try to call themselves, aka rebranding away from pedophiles, was the final nail in the coffin. So this whole wave of lunacy, this wave of violence and cancel culture, which inevitably drew the entire world against the movement as a whole with their disgust and now actual outright hostility. The pushback from the normies, I think, is becoming so intense that I think the LGBT community recognizes the danger that they could lose a lot of the ground that they have gained, not just from acceptance as a whole, but you could even see, and I'm not predicting this, but don't be surprised because the outrage is so severe that you could see hard-fought rights gained, lost. I wouldn't be shocked to see the reversal of gay rights marriage in the not-too-distant future. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but the outrage is so intense because once you start going after children and forcing this down people's throats, what do you think is going to happen? I think this was an inevitability. And there are people that agree with that as well. But the left, my friends, is not celebrating this move. No. It's either ignoring it, like I checked The Guardian, Mother Jones, The Intercept, Slate, Vice, a bunch of these left-wing rag sites, and nobody's talking about it. Or when you do, there's outright hostility to this breakaway movement from the left. They don't want the gay community to reassert themselves and gain their own independence. Which takes me then to this article. This is from, let's see, I've got two here. This is from the LGBTQ, Sexual Orientations and Radical Ideologies. And let's see, let's go down to the pull quote here. Not everyone, they write, supports this move. A spokesman for the Beaumont Society, the UK's largest transgender support group, claimed that this new coalition reflects efforts of well-funded groups with their own agenda to divide the LGBTQ plus IA barbecue family. according to the Telegraph. The ILGA Europe also responded, stating that division only weakens the advancements that we have already made, while collaboration across groups with different needs is the path to lasting change for all, not just for some. But see, here's the problem. Being trans does not mean that you are gay. You can be straight and trans. The gay community knows this, but they've been lumped in with the same group. I'm going to reference again the Her app from a couple of years ago, a lesbian dating app, who basically came out and told all of their women on their app that, look, I know you're into women, but you see these trans women, biological men with penises, you better want to date them too because they identify as women, or get the hell out the app. This madness, this was not pro-gay, not for the good gay community. Now, this is from a Substack article, and this was what the genesis of my desire to talk about this. This is Annie O'Brien, who wanted to talk about the Declaration of Independence for the LGB community. She says, at long last, it has happened. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual organizations from around the world have launched the LGB International and formally declared independence from the trans and queer movement, and thank God for that. My own refusal to be tied to a misogynistic, deranged, and increasingly violent trans queer movement has seen me attacked, harassed, blacklisted, and maligned for more than a decade. It is a relief to now see the resistance to the alphabet mafia has gathered serious momentum and is growing too loud to be ignored. And yeah, these guys, you are also looking at the erasure of women. The idea that we had Democratic politicians who, when asked, what is a woman, would say, I'm not a scientist. I'm a little bit retarded. I don't know. There's a little voice there for you. And it was stupid to watch. It was maddening to watch. People who otherwise should have had functioning brains were sitting there going, I don't know what a woman is. And rights were vanishing. When you see the medical community, who are supposed to be about the science, erasing the word mother to birthing person, you knew there was a problem. Anyway, let's continue with Annie's article. For years, she writes, we've been told that we are stronger together. What that's meant in practice is lesbians and gays being strong-armed out of our own spaces and accused of bigotry for having sexual boundaries. Together has meant sit down, shut up, and pretend sex is negotiable. Remember the whole, we're born this way. This is just the way, it's not a choice, it's just how we're born. Well, the T community and all the terror side was saying, nope, forget everything we've said this whole time. You will be straight if it's a transgender who's pretending to be your gender. It's just so dumb. How do they not think this was going to implode? Anyway, it said, it has meant our funding, our resources, she writes, our organizations have been co-opted for causes nothing to do with us, but no more. The LGB International is about reclaiming what is ours, the movement built by and for people who are same-sex attracted. Our rights were not won on some fuzzy notion of gender identity. They were won with an understanding of the hard reality of biological sex. Something which, by the way, the trans movement is clearly anti-science, which is ironic when you consider that the left has always been trying to bludgeon the right over the head about we need to understand and follow the science, except when it comes to biology. Now, lesbians are women attracted to women. Gay men are men attracted to men, and bisexuals are attracted to both sexes. Simple, clear, non-negotiable. But in recent years, this has been swallowed up by a TQ plus barbecue, free for all, that has replaced clarity with confusion and sex-based rights with a hierarchy where gender identity trumps everything. And it's almost like they, and again, I'm not saying this, it's just a thought that popped in my head, but, if you were trying to take down the movement, this would have been a great way to do that. If you were on the other side that didn't like the LGBT community, let's just insert trans and blow it all up. Of course, I don't think that was the driving force behind it, but man, they were definitely helping that. Anyway, she says, and don't tell me I haven't been warning about this. I have been banging this drum for years. Years ago, I wrote that LGB is fundamentally different to the trans, queer, plus community, and gay rights were won by open debate, not by silencing dissenters. I said plainly that gender ideology was trampling over women and children and the LGB. Let's be absolutely clear about the differences here. The LGB is about sexual orientation based on sex. The TQ plus is about gender identity based on feelings, meaning no reality. Many of us LGB people want to defend single-sex spaces, protect children from sexualization and medical mutilation. Right. These things they don't belong together. Safeguard fair sport, insist on evidence-based healthcare, and hold the line on language and reality. But the TQ plus agenda is to force institutions to elevate self-declared gender above sex, to demand compelled speech, and to treat disagreement as violence. This is part of that wacko lunatic words are violence. It's the same reason why they justify violence. Like when we see the attacks against Charlie Kirk, why were there so many leftists celebrating? Because words equal violence. They were killing us with their words. Apparently they never heard about sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words will never harm me or something? I don't know. Now these two things, she writes, are not the same movement, and pretending that they are has been a disaster. Yeah, it has. This split isn't about cruelty or exclusion. It is about honesty. LGBT people have distinct needs and interests that cannot and will not be negotiated away. We deserve our own voice at the table without being vetoed by activists who are not same-sex attracted, but who presume to speak over us. There may be some LGBs who disagree, sure, good. I'd rather have an argument than be erased. Which is the whole point of the trans movement. It was simply to bludgeon the world over the head until you simply accepted this radical, weird, anti-humanism movement that has been the trans community. Not all of them, of course, but a huge portion of them, the vocal majority, has been violent, has been forcefully trying to make everyone just go along with this insanity. Now, Annie writes, those crying division need to realize the division already happened when they told lesbians to accept males as women. Ding, ding, ding. Remember the her app? When they accused gay men of bigotry for not wanting sex with females. And when they emptied the word sex of all meaning. We're not creating a split. We're refusing to keep swallowing the poison. I mean, it's good that they're doing it now, but this is 15 years late. The damage has been done. Now, Annie goes on to write, I know plenty of people are sick to death of rainbow washing. You roll your eyes at the rainbow crossings painted on the street, the gay TMs plastered in glitter, and the police marching around in politicized uniforms instead of doing their actual jobs. I get it. None of that nonsense makes life any safer or freer for lesbians, gay men, or bisexuals. It's corporate branding and political virtue signaling dressed up as progress. And by the way, doing those kinds of events, I've always thought was counterintuitive. When I watched even the pride parades back in the day, it's weird. When you have, you don't see heterosexual parades. If you want to be considered just normal and just part of everyone else, you don't segregate yourself by doing special celebrations because we are a minority community and we need to be, amplified, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff divides. You just, like back in the 90s, there was an effort to not look at color, for example. Racism, I think, was at the lowest point in the U.S. in the 90s. Growing up, as kids, you didn't even acknowledge color. And again, I'm from California, so there was a lot more diversity there as far as mixed communities. But you didn't even think about it. It was different. Now, I know that's not the same case everywhere in the U.S. at the time, but from my personal experience, my anecdotal experience, it was weird if you made a point to segregate, to point out the differences. We were just humans. That kind of thing has been lost with this militant agenda to force everything down everyone's throats. Betsy says when they started messing with kids is when I believe they should be jailed. Right. Well, once they started going after kids, once they started doing the whole chop-a-dig-off-of-me or addictomy procedures to little kids, that was the bridge too far. Now, I'll be honest, I think all of those surgeries should be banned. It's mentally ill. It's one thing if you want to pretend to be a woman or a man. If you're not, I don't care. Live your life. But when you reach the point where you believe genuinely that you're something you're not, we have a problem. That you're mentally ill. And if you went to a doctor and you believed you didn't have limbs, you didn't have legs, and you try to convince a doctor to chop off your legs so that you could live your reality, no doctor could do it. They wouldn't do it. But you go in there and say, you know what? I believe I should have a penis now, or I need to chop this off so I can be a female. There's something inherently wrong with all of this. And how the hell did we get to the point where that seemed okay? And I think every parent that allowed their children under the age of 18 to get that kind of surgery should themselves be jailed. And I'm not joking about it. I think they need to be pursued. You mutilated your own child. You destroyed them. It doesn't get much more sick than that. How could you do that? I can't even fathom what goes through the minds of an adult, a parent, who says, you know what, little Johnny, you want to be Sally now? Let's go get it done. Not only are you sterilizing your children, but you're leading them to a life of severe injury, damage, and you'll never be normal again. Even if you try to revert back, you're done. Let's go back to this article. Now, Annie writes, to those who sneer, no one cares you're gay, shut up about it. Understand that we'd love nothing more than to just shut up about it. We'd happily get on with our lives, fall in love, pay our bills, and be left alone like everybody else. Exactly. That was the whole point, to be normalized. But before we can do that, she writes, we have to fight off the poison that's being pumped into our movement by the trans Q industry. We didn't ask for gender ideology to hitch itself to our cause and rot it from the inside. Now, I'm going to add, though, you should have fought back sooner. More people in the gay community should have said something then. There was hardly any pushback in the beginning, even as the militarization of it spread. The pushback now is only happening because the blowback is becoming quite apparent. And I think anyone with a brain in the gay community knows that something needs to be done before it destroys everything that they've gained. And he goes on to write that we didn't ask to be told that same-sex attraction is offensive or that our boundaries are bigotry. This is about clearing out that rot so that our relationship with the wider public can be restored. And good luck with that. The damage has been severe. The damage, I think, has been done. It might take a generation to shift this stuff back. What we actually want is simple. The freedom to live our lives openly, without discrimination, without harassment, and without the threat of violence. We do not need or want a rainbow flag shoved in your face at every turn. We don't need banks and airlines performing allyship. We want equal treatment under the law and a society where being same-sex attracted isn't a liability. That's it. Maybe one day we can make advocacy organizations redundant because society simply treats us as people, which, by the way, will never happen as long as you have advocacy organizations. You want to know why? Because the bureaucracy within those organizations has but one purpose: to keep having a job, to keep having something that gives them a paycheck. If they were to solve the problem, they would all be out of work. The organization would cease to exist. This is the problem, by the way, with the government. This is why when you have the war on poverty, which we've been fighting for over 50 years, every year there has been more poverty than the year before. They never solve anything. Why is that? Well, again, these bureaucrats know that if they fix the problem, then they're out of work. So they're never going to solve the problem. This is why big government is inherently problematic when it gets too big, because they don't want to end themselves. Now, the creation, Annie writes, of LGB International and the formal split from the trans queer juggernaut makes this more possible. For too long, our legitimate goals have been buried under an alphabet soup of demands that have nothing to do with us. When every demand gets rolled together, people rightly see the whole circus as a cultural power grab rather than a fight for basic fairness. By drawing a clear line, we can get back to what matters, protecting same-sex attracted people from real harm without asking the world to repaint itself in rainbows. We can all guess how this will play out in New Zealand. The media will either ignore it entirely or they will frame it as an LGB International as some kind of hate group. Those are the only two modes of coverage we get. It's either silence or smear. When a movement emerges that challenges the orthodoxy of the LGBTQ plus barbecue, most journalists don't see a story about same-sex attracted people reclaiming their voice. Instead, they see a threat to the tidy narrative they've invested years in. So rather than ask why lesbian, gay men, and bisexuals feel compelled to break away, they'll slap on the controversial label and hunt for a way to link us to bigotry. Well, welcome to everyone on the right. It's the same sad song and dance. It's easier to demonize, she writes, than to deal with the uncomfortable truth that gender ideology has corrupted what was once a successful human rights movement. And remember, most of these journalists and editors are heterosexuals. We've seen it before. Stuff churns out rainbow puff pieces by the dozen while ignoring the real-world consequences of policy on women and children. The RNZ runs endless features celebrating inclusion, but can't bring itself to platform dissenting voices without framing them as dangerous. Right, the whole inclusive narrative is garbage. Inclusion simply means exclusion. It's the inevitable, it's like the anti-fascists calling themselves, we're anti-fascists, while actively participating in fascist tactics, in brown shirt tactics. Words mean things, and a lot of these different groups try to usurp them. Why do you think there's the term unhoused instead of homeless? Makes it sound better. Or birthing person instead of mother. The idea is to indoctrinate the next generation into not seeing the difference, into being blinded to reality. Now, the NZ Herald has perfected the trick of reporting women's concerns about sports or safety only to bury them under quotes from activists calling these women hateful. Like J.K. Rowling. When the group I was previously the spokeswoman for, Speak Up for Women, tried to host public meetings, the coverage wasn't about the issues. We were smeared as a hate group. Again, welcome to the right, and how the right is treated. And venues were pressured to cancel. Massey University deplatformed me, Dr. Holly Lawford Smith, Megan Murphy, and current Race Relations Commissioner Dr. Melissa Derby as a result. And when Posey Parker came to Auckland, the violence at Albert Park was whitewashed, with Stuff and RNZ calling the mob a celebration of love. I hope this wakes you up, by the way, to the pattern of the left. They always do this. The media, the content creators who support the media and the left wing, they always whitewash this stuff. Don't believe your lying eyes. Mostly peaceful. Religion of peace. It all falls under the same blanket. Now, Annie writes that the pattern is always the same. Dodge and the substance, reach for the smear. Ding, ding, ding. That's exactly what we can expect now. If the media cover LGB International at all, it'll be with scare quotes, loading framing, and the inevitable attempt to link us with the far right. But the public is not as stupid as our media think they are. Ordinary New Zealanders can see the difference between a movement grounded in sex-based reality and one that insists biology is offensive. So yes, the papers might ignore this news or worse, smear it, but no amount of lazy headlines from Stuff, RNZ, or the Herald will stop us. To genuine allies, including the trans people who recognize the difference between basic courtesy and the wholesale rewriting of reality, you're welcome at the table. This isn't about shutting doors, it's about setting boundaries. You don't have to agree with us on everything to see the sense in defending biological reality and the integrity of same-sex attraction. But make no mistake, LGBT people will be back in the driver's seat of our own movement. Well, you've got a fight on your hands, because don't forget that the other side, the trans community, or the LGBTQ plus side of the trans community, doesn't want to talk about reality, doesn't care about the truth. This is why it's all about cancel culture. It's forcing you to agree. It's 1984, erasing words. You can only have positives, no negatives, double plus good. That's what the modern left has become. The era, say here in the US, the era during the Clinton presidency, the Democrat Party, the left then, is dead. You have radicals on every corner. They're usurping the party, growing ever stronger as days go by. But I do think long term, this is going to drive more and more people to the right, simply because it's the only side right now that has any modicum of reality. There are crazies on the right, sure, but they are dwarfed by their leftist counterparts right now. The plot was lost. Now, Annie writes that we fight for achievable goals, not abstract identity politics. We will not stand for violent mobs, marching in our names, dressed in black and covering their faces. She's talking about Antifa. We condemn the overt sexual performance and predatory nature of gynophilic males, or that's not pronounced properly, but whatever. We call out the grift of so-called Rainbow Pledge organizations that fleece companies in exchange for a stamp of approval based on indoctrination of queer theory. We also demand a return to debate rather than denunciation. You've got your work cut out for you, Annie. Our movement was built on persuasion and open argument, not on silencing, not on shaming or canceling those who disagree. We have seen what happens when the conversation is policed by outraged mobs, is people retreat, common sense gets abandoned, and the public turns away in disgust. Again, you're 15 years late here. But she says that we will not play that game anymore. Above all, we are reclaiming the wheel of our own movement. For too long, the LGB people have been passengers on a bus driven by activists who do not share our destination, who have steered us straight towards a cliff. That era is over, she claims. We are taking back control, and we're setting a course grounded in reality, fairness, and the defense of same-sex attracted people everywhere. That is a big, big task, I'm afraid. When you think how much damage has been done up until now, because if she had come out and said this a decade ago, if the LGB International had appeared 10 years ago, when the insanity was only a few years in, this might have been a easy, clean break. But now, the outrage over the indoctrination of children, the sexualization of children, the mutilation of children, and the cancel culture, and the attacks left and right on anyone who would deviate from the dogma, people are not going to forget that. I still think that gay marriage itself could be in trouble unless enough of the gay community stand up and throw away the trans community as a whole. You can't just break away from them. You're going to have to push back on them. You're going to have to join the sane people in fighting back. Otherwise, your average Joe is just going to go, okay, they've separated. I don't believe you. Think about J.K. Rowling. Perhaps one of the most successful book writers ever. Right? She writes the Harry Potter series. She's been a big activist to the gay community. But when she said women's spaces for women, I don't believe in trans lunacy, they wanted her dead. They wanted her canceled. They wanted her removed. The actors that she helped make famous attacked her. I'm not going to get into it here. I'm going to cover it on my alt channel, Topical Umbrella, later today. But you've got Emma Watson, who smeared the hell out of J.K. Rowling, a.k.a. Hermione, is now trying to give overtures to try and make amends, and J.K. Rowling's like, go F yourself. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But the damage has been done. And I don't know how you repair it, at least in the short term, outside of actively joining the sane people and going after the trans community who are trying to push their identity on everybody else. If they don't do that, I don't know. I don't know how you're really going to fix all of this.